Live television, a sitting FBI director, and a promise, it's coming tomorrow. That's Kash Patel on a national morning show announcing a $250 million defamation lawsuit against a major magazine over a report he called fabricated. Here's the thing about promises made on live television. They're checkable. You can go back months later and see whether tomorrow actually happened. Today, we're doing exactly that, walking through the interview itself, the reporter's on-air response, a separate specific question about a completely different topic, and then checking the lawsuit claim against what's actually publicly available. No speculation about anything we can't verify. Let's start with the interview. Quick context, timeline fast version. Kash Patel is confirmed as FBI Director in February 2025. Over the following year, a series of investigative reports from various outlets raise questions about his conduct in office, jet usage, personnel decisions, and in one specific case, a report from The Atlantic magazine containing allegations about his personal conduct. Patel appears on a Fox Business program with Maria Bartiromo to respond directly. In that same appearance, he's also asked a separate, unrelated question about the status of any FBI investigation into 2020 election fraud claims, a topic President Trump has referenced repeatedly since taking office. The interview includes a follow-up segment featuring the Atlantic reporter responding directly to Patel's characterization of her work. That's the setup. Let's go through it, piece by piece. Thread 1. The lawsuit threat word for word. Here's exactly what was said, without paraphrasing the key parts. Bartiromo asks Patel directly, "So you're going to sue them?" Patel answers, "Absolutely." She follows up, "Tomorrow you will be dropping a lawsuit against The Atlantic magazine?" Patel, "Yes, I will." He adds that this is necessary to fight back against the fake news. That is a specific, dated, checkable claim. A lawsuit filed the following day, naming a specific outlet, seeking a specific figure, described elsewhere in the same appearance as $250 million. At the time of this hearing coverage, no such lawsuit has been confirmed as filed and reported in the public record. This is an important, precise thing to say correctly. The absence of confirmation is not the same as proof it was never filed. Court filings can be delayed, filed under seal in some early stages, or covered unevenly by different outlets. What we can say with confidence is that, based on publicly available records at the time of this video, we have not found confirmation that this specific lawsuit was filed as promised. If that changes, we'll update it directly in a follow-up. Thread 2. The Atlantic reporter's on-air response. The same broadcast includes a segment with the reporter behind the Atlantic story. Her response on air is worth quoting closely because it's a direct, sourced rebuttal rather than a vague denial. She describes herself as a very careful, very diligent, award-winning investigative reporter, states she stands by every word of the reporting, and says her outlet reached out to both the White House and the Justice Department for comment, including, she states, 19 detailed questions, and that neither disputed any specific fact in the piece. That's a specific checkable claim on her side, too, that formal requests for comment were sent and went unanswered on the facts, as opposed to being denied. If accurate, non-response to specific factual questions is meaningfully different from an active denial of those same facts, and it's worth being precise that didn't dispute is what she claims, not necessarily an admission from the White House or DOJ that the underlying claims were true. Thread 3. What the underlying report actually alleged. Now the harder part. Because the underlying report contains claims about personal conduct that are serious and, as of this recording, unproven in any court or independent investigative body. The reporting, as characterized in this interview and elsewhere, includes allegations from unnamed current and former officials describing concerns about Patel's conduct, alongside separately reported incidents, including a publicly documented moment of Patel drinking beer with the U.S. Olympic hockey team following a medal win, which is a confirmed, photographed public event, not a disputed claim. Here is where we have to be careful and precise, because this is exactly the kind of claim that gets overstated in coverage. Allegations sourced to unnamed officials describing private conduct are not the same evidentiary category as a photographed public event. The hockey team incident is documented and undisputed. Broader claims about other alleged private conduct sourced to anonymous officials remain unverified allegations, reported by a credentialed outlet, denied in general terms by Patel's team, but not independently confirmed by any court, inspector general finding, or on-the-record named source as of this recording. We're stating that distinction explicitly because treating an anonymous sourced allegation with the same certainty as a photographed event would be inaccurate, regardless of which side either favors. Thread 4. The 2020 election question. A completely separate topic raised in the same interview, Bartiromo asks Patel directly what progress has been made 14 months into his tenure on investigating 2020 election fraud claims that President Trump has continued to reference. Patel's answer, on the record, references his prior work on the House Intelligence Committee investigating what he describes as FISA abuses connected to the 2016 election, a different election cycle than the one asked about, and states that the FBI has indicted former Director James Comey, with that case going through the judicial process. It's worth being precise here. The question asked about 2020 election fraud specifically, Patel's answer pivots substantially toward 2016-era FISA process concerns and the separate Comey case. Whether the Comey indictment is legally connected to 2020 election fraud claims specifically, as opposed to unrelated matters from a different period, is not clarified directly in this answer. That gap between the specific question asked and the specific answer given is visible directly in the transcript, independent of anyone's outside characterization of it. The pivot. Okay, but look, we have to be completely objective here. The defense actually makes valid points on both threads, and they deserve real consideration. On the lawsuit, public figures announce litigation intentions on television fairly often, and plans genuinely do change. Legal strategy can shift after initial consultation with counsel. A claim can be restructured, or a decision can be made that a public statement was sufficient without formal litigation. The absence of a confirmed filing doesn't prove the original statement was made in bad faith. It may simply reflect a change in legal approach after the interview aired. On the underlying allegations, it's genuinely difficult to disprove a negative, and Patel's team's general denial deserves to be weighed fairly alongside the anonymous sourced claims. Anonymous sourcing, while a legitimate and common journalistic practice, does place a limit on how conclusively outside observers, including us, can evaluate the claims independently. The reporter's stated confidence in her sourcing is meaningful, but it's not the same as independent third-party confirmation, and both things can be true at once. The election question pivot. Answering a question about one election cycle by referencing related prior work on a different cycle isn't necessarily evasive. The FISA-related work and the Comey case may be, in Patel's view, part of the same broader narrative about the FBI's conduct across that whole period, even if the specific years don't line up exactly with what was asked. Real talk, how this affects actual people. The lawsuit threat thread matters beyond this one case because public officials announcing legal action on television without it materializing is worth tracking as a pattern for any official, any party, because it tells you something about how seriously to weight similar announcements in the future. The anonymous sourcing thread matters because it's a genuinely difficult, recurring problem in how the public evaluates any investigative story about any powerful person. Sourcing that's credible enough to publish isn't always sourcing that's conclusive enough to treat as settled fact. And learning to hold both of those ideas at once, take it seriously, don't treat it as proven, is a skill that applies to literally every major investigative story you'll ever read, regardless of who it's about. Here's what to watch for next. If a defamation lawsuit against the outlet is filed at any point, that filing becomes a public court document we can review directly, and it will actually test some of these underlying claims through a formal legal process, discovery, depositions, evidentiary standards, rather than competing television statements. That would be a significant escalation in verifiability compared to everything covered in this video. I'll be tracking whether that filing happens, and I'll do a direct follow-up the moment it does, checking it line by line the same way we handle every other document on this channel. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss that follow-up. Drop below, do you think the absence of a filed lawsuit months after a public promise to file one is meaningful on its own, or is that reading too much into it? Let's talk about it in the comments.